This taco is simultaneously the biggest pain in the ass to eat and one of the most delicious, nostalgic throwbacks I can think of. And it's not just me. This thing has been part of American life for the better part of a century. It's in our cafeterias, in our grocery stores, and it even has its own day of the week.
Taco Tuesday!
We grew up on it, we love it, and as a country have decided to continue to eat this thing even though the second it touches our mouths, it detonates on contact. That's correct. Today we're talking all about the hard shell taco. Where it came from, who invented it, and the story on how it became one of the most iconic foods in America. Because here's the thing. This taco is both Mexican and American at the same time. And the story of how that happened is a lot weirder than you might think. And of course, you already know we're gonna make our very own hard shell tacos in the same exact way that they were made first here in the US nearly 100 years ago. Before we get to the part where a white dude from San Bernardino accidentally invents an entire category of fast food, we gotta lay down some context. Which means we have to talk about corn. Briefly, I promise. I'm not gonna make you sit through 10,000 years of agricultural history. We all have stuff to do. Now, corn was domesticated in what is now modern day Mexico thousands of years ago. People in Mesoamerica figured out that if you soak corn in water with lime, not the fun margarita kind, the mineral kind, you can grind it into a dough called masa. And when you flatten masa, then cook it, you got yourself a tortilla. You put something in said tortilla and boom, you got yourself a taco. Now, most people assume the word taco comes from some like ancient Aztec word for like deliciousness or something, which honestly, it's not a bad guess. In actuality, it turns out the name taco comes from Mexican silver miners in the 18th century who used it as the name for the little paper-wrapped charges of gunpowder they would jam into holes in the rock face and blow up. At least that's one working theory. Then at some point, the miners started calling their lunches, you know, basically like little tortillas wrapped around whatever filling was available, tacos. That is correct. Your favorite food on the planet is named after a bomb. Pretty metal. But here's where things get interesting for our purposes. The first written record of tacos, keyword written record, in the United States dates back to 1905, when people came over from Mexico by the thousands to work in the mines, railroads, and the farms that ultimately built the American West. Naturally, these people brought with them their food, like anyone else would. Which means by the early 1900s, there were tacos in LA, San Antonio, and literally every Mexican neighborhood and every southwestern town that had one. This is pretty cool. For example, in San Antonio, starting as early as the mid-1800s, groups of Mexican women set up food stands in downtown plazas every night, cooking over mesquite fires, serving tamales, enchiladas, chili con carne, and tacos, you know, by the light of the oil lantern, right? This is Old West stuff. These women were nicknamed the Chili Queens. And in 1893, they even brought a stand to the Chicago World's Fair, which is the same fair that introduced us to Cracker Jacks and PBR. And I wanted to talk about that because this is arguably the first time that Mexican food really reached a national American audience. But here's the thing I want you to sit with for a second. For the first half of the 20th century, real Mexican food, which included tacos of course, already existed in America. They were already here. They were already being cooked, eaten, and loved every single day by Mexican Americans and Mexican American communities, decade after decade after decade. But for almost everybody else outside of these communities and with no ties to Mexico, those tacos might as well have never existed. There was a wall, not a physical one, but a cultural one. When the taco finally crossed that wall, it wasn't from the Chili Queens or any mom and pop shop in East LA. It was a different taco built for a completely different audience. It was hard, crunchy, and blessed with bright neon orange shredded cheddar cheese. This video is sponsored by Trade Coffee. All right, here's the thing. For a long time, I was just sort of grabbing whatever I saw on the shelf at the grocery store or ordering overrated burnt ash for coffee online. You know, just not really thinking too much about it, which is honestly kind of a bummer considering how much of this stuff I drink on the daily, and I'm sure you do too. Trade completely changed that for me. You start off by taking this little quiz, which takes literally like 2 minutes, and their team of actual coffee experts matches you with beans from over 55 top roasters all around the country. Roasters you've probably never heard of. At least I hadn't. Which is part of the fun. Every bag gets roasted to order and shows up fresh at your door.
Oh my God!
It's cafe quality at grocery store prices, which I can appreciate and I'm sure you do too. Another dope part about all this is that for a year-round cold brew enjoyer like myself, Trade has curated picks specifically for cold brew so that you don't have to guess at that either. They just kind of like gently guide you toward the right coffee. And if your first bag isn't exactly your thing, Trade will replace it completely for free. No questions asked. That's the first bag guarantee. You can try it yourself now and get 30% off your first subscription by following the link in the description. That's drinktradecoffee.com/Adam Witt. Again, 30% off your first subscription. That's pretty nice. Okay, back to the video. In the late 1930s, a woman named Lucia Rodriguez opened up a diner called Mitla Cafe in San Bernardino, California. Now, Lucia was a Mexican immigrant from Jalisco, and on her menu was a dish she'd grown up with back home called tacos dorados. Basically a corn tortilla folded around a filling and then fried until golden. Sound familiar? The one Lucia's mom made for Lent was actually made with potatoes. But in California, Lucia made some changes because she was basically forced to use what was available to her in her new home. She swapped the potatoes for beef, added toppings like shredded lettuce, tomatoes, then crowned the whole thing with a mound of bright orange, fridge-cold shredded cheddar cheese. My type of woman. Yeah, that's it. That's the recipe. A Mexican immigrant woman in a tiny diner off Route 66 invented what for a very long time almost every single American thought to be the real taco. It wasn't Taco Bell, it was Lucia, so just kind of keep that in mind as we move through this. Now, Mitla Cafe would go on to become a staple in the community, becoming a third space for locals and even acting as an HQ for fighting segregation in California. The Mexican Chamber of Commerce met there. Cesar Chavez even ate there. And cool enough, the lawsuit that was responsible for desegregating the city's public pools was organized at Mitla Cafe, a case that would become the precedent for Brown versus Board of Education. That is correct. The same restaurant that gave America the hard shell taco was also responsible for giving it the blueprint for desegregation. Iconic. You get it, the spot was beloved, and because of this, there was always a line out the door. Now we're gonna fast forward a couple decades later and introduce a very key character in all of this, who goes by the name of Glen Bell. Now, Mr. Bell came back from World War II and decided to open up a hamburger stand right across the street from Mitla Cafe. Now, the crazy part is that his stand was actually doing okay. But the problem was the McDonald brothers had also just opened up their first burger place just up the street, and they were absolutely raking it in, right? The McDonald's brothers, I think you might have heard about those guys. Now, Glenn, he knew that he couldn't out-burger the McD's boys. So he started looking for a different angle. And every single day, without fail, he would look over at Mitla Cafe, see the people spilling onto the street waiting in line. So he did what any aspiring, shameless mid-century entrepreneur would do. He started eating there, very often, a lot. He'd order the tacos, take notes in his head, and try to reverse engineer the recipe. But he kept failing. So he'd come back the next day and order the tacos again for months and months and months. So depending on who you asked, he was either kind of like, cheekily busted trying to reverse engineer the recipe, or he befriended the staff who invited him in. But regardless, in a generationally hospitable move, he was invited in by the owners of Mitla Cafe to learn how to make their famous tacos. They just opened the door. They're like, dude, we know what you're doing. Just get in here, man. We'll teach you. So sweet. Sweet people. But here's where things get spicy. Bell took what he learned at Mitla Cafe and made one massive change that would arguably go on to change the entire landscape of American food, American fast food. Now remember, at Mitla Cafe, they specialized in a version of tacos dorados. Basically, you stuff a tortilla with whatever you can, you fold it up, and then you fry it until it's crispy, right? It was crunchy, it was fried fresh, it was delicious, but of course it takes time, as all good cooking does. However, time and patience was not something that meshed well in the new hustle and bustle culture of post-World War II America. So Glenny Boy's big idea was to pre-fry the shells in the morning, stack them up, and when a customer orders a taco, scoop in the fillings and hand it over. Yep, that's literally it. That was his innovation. He didn't invent the recipe. He didn't invent the hard shell. He would go on to make an assembly line for it. And though the family at Mitla Cafe says that they were never taken advantage of, I really can't help but to picture Glen Bell's face when he first learned the Mitla Cafe recipe. I'm thinking like Michael Keaton playing Ray Kroc in The Founder type vibe.
You know what I came up with, Mac? A concept. I came up with the concept of winning.
So armed with this recipe, in the early 1950s, Bell added tacos to his hamburger stand menu for 19 cents each. And here's the detail that tells you everything you need to know. When Bell first put his tacos on the menu, the Mexican Americans living in the neighborhood didn't order that. They preferred the hamburgers. They'd go to Bell's for the hamburgers. They already knew what a taco tasted like. They could get that from Mitla Cafe, so there was no reason to go to Bell's. The people who actually lined up for Bell's tacos were white. Remember that wall we were talking about earlier? Yeah, that's starting to crumble down. Eventually, he decided to sell the hamburger stand to open a taco-only place called Taco Tia. Then another. Then in the early 1960s, Glen Bell opened up a 400 square foot stucco building in Downey, California with mission-style arches and a walk-up window, calling it Taco Bell. And the hard shell taco, Lucia's recipe, Mitla's invention, pre-fried by a guy who learned it across the street, was about to do something no Mexican food had ever done before in American history. Within 20 years from the start, Taco Bells were all over the country. And you already know the story more or less, right? Big company sells to a bigger company, makes a whole lot of guap. Good job, Taco Bell. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what happens to the hard shell taco once it's let loose in America, because it does not stay in the drive-thru. In the late 1960s, a brand called Old El Paso changed the dinner game in America with one product. Old El Paso had actually been around for a very, very long time before the 1960s and made like canned goods and stuff and other like Southwestern ingredients, but we're not gonna get into that. Old El Paso came out with a complete taco dinner kit in a cardboard box. This magical box came with a dozen or so pre-fried hard shells, a packet of seasoning, and a little bit of mild taco sauce, which yeah, we'll talk about that later. Just add some ground beef, shred on some cheese, and boom, dinner is on the table in 20 minutes flat, and the mid-century American housewives completely lost their mind over it. I would too. Makes life a lot easier on a Tuesday. By the 1970s, Old El Paso products were so widely distributed that supermarkets across the country started carving out dedicated Mexican food aisles. Not just in the Southwest, where Mexican ingredients had been on shelves for decades, but everywhere else, right? Ohio, Connecticut, Missouri, Illinois, Minnesota. Suddenly, the hard shell taco wasn't just a restaurant thing. It was a thing that people were enjoying at home, likely on a Tuesday. The hard shell taco didn't just become an American food, it became an American ritual with its own day of the week that you could legally get sued for using. Literally, I'm not joking. A Wyoming-based fast food company called Taco John's trademarked Taco Tuesday in 1989. And they aggressively enforced that trademark for years, sending cease and desist letters to restaurants that used the phrase. Funny enough, LeBron James actually petitioned to cancel the trademark in 2023, and Taco Bell also filed against it too. Taco John's ultimately gave up the trademark. Yeah, RIP, but also like, don't do that. Taco Tuesday's for everybody. Don't get greedy. And then it hits the youth. By the 1980s, the hard shell taco was part of the federal school lunch program, which means an entire generation of American kids grew up eating these tacos. Okay, let's just take a step back and picture where we are for a second. The hard shell taco is now in restaurants. It's in grocery stores. It's even in school cafeterias. It has its own day of the week, and a whole generation of American kids have now grown up thinking this is what a taco is. Their parents think it, their grandparents think it, and for the better part of 50 years, if you were an American with no ties to Mexico, and somebody said the word taco, the hard shell taco is likely what would come to mind, statistically. Not corn tortillas with al pastor, we're not talking about carnitas, we're not talking about carne asada, none of that. Not birria, not birria, shame. Thank God we have birria now. A hard, crunchy shell, ground beef, sour cream, iceberg lettuce, tomato cubes, and bright orange shredded cheese. That's what the deal was. I don't really want to make this a history lesson about Taco Bell, but this is wild. In the early 90s, Taco Bell opened a food cart within a KFC in Mexico City. And it actually went so badly, so quickly, that they had to take the hard shell taco off the menu because Mexican customers just didn't recognize it as a taco. They thought it was like a tostada or something. They tried renaming it, but the customers told reporters that it was, quote, very ugly, unquote. And a food writer in Monterey even wrote, "What foolish gringos, they want to come by force to sell us tacos in Taco Land." Another Mexican cultural critic even wrote that it was like bringing ice to the Arctic. And that's really our whole story in one anecdote. The hard shell taco started in the US as a spin on a real Mexican taco dorado. Over time, it was culturally commandeered by fast food giants and turned into something that we refer to as a hard shell taco here in the US. And this version of a hard shell taco is now so American that the country it claims to come from doesn't even recognize it. The biggest Mexican fast food chain on earth couldn't even give its food away in Mexico. And that's not because Mexicans don't like American food, right? KFC, Burger King, McDonald's, Starbucks, these are all huge in Mexico. The Americano hard shell taco is something that just doesn't really translate. Regardless of translation though, I'm getting pretty hungo, so what do you say we muck some of these puppies? Ooh, should we get some Taco Bell? Yeah, I think we should. I think that, yeah, it'd be fun to compare it. Let's do that. Hi, can I just get 3 crunchy tacos? And then can I also do a chicken quesadilla?
Okay. There you go.
Thank you. Oh yeah. Okay, I think I got everything ready for taco night. Where do we begin? You know what's cool about this? These are 3 different tacos, but 3 different versions of the same one, and none of them would be recognized in Mexico City. Maybe this one kind of, sort of, but. All right, where do we start? We gotta go in chronological order here. I think we gotta go with Mitla here. All right, look at this boy, dude. This whole plate situation is just nice, man. Going in. Cheese. Wow. Gotta hit it with the limon. I'm gonna go with a little bit of verde. Taco's so good it got me Blair Witching in the corner. That's incredible. And I'm not just saying it. That shredded beef is rendered and warm, and the tortilla is warm and crispy. You heard it. No AI can do anything to fake that. But what really gets me is that mound of cold shredded cheddar on the top, just that sort of temporal, that's not the right word, what temporal time? Temporal. The temperature contrast is incredible. The cold cheese, the cold tomatoes, the crispy cold lettuce, contrasting that warm, shreddy, unctuous, but kind of crispy because we fried it beef, cradled in that crispy and warm tortilla. Insane. A little bit of salsa verde on there, a little bit of fresh limon. Game over, GG. That's a fantastic taco. It's gonna be hard to beat. Not that this is a competition, but yeah. Next up, yeah, we're gonna have to go Taco Bell. Okay, listen, man. People who love Taco Bell really stand Taco Bell, man. It is a cult following, that's for sure. For me, it's the chicken quesadilla. I feel like everybody has their nostalgic childhood item, but yeah, we just got the good old Taco Supreme, baby, hard shell. And of course, I mean, I know what these taste like, so I'm going in. I wanna go hot. I'm just gonna have to like put it right on top there. And then you know what, because we're feeling wild and crazy, we're gonna suicide Diablo and hot. Whoa, whoa, salud. You know what? You love it, or you don't love it. I like it. Taco Bell, baby. Without that, this most likely wouldn't be as big of a thing as it is today. So with that said, a couple of things we gotta talk about here. The gabacho, the gringo, the white person taco night, baby. You have these toppings, they're all the same on each of these tacos, right? You got the ground beef with the taco seasoning, good old sour cream dollop, shredded lettuce, a little bit of onion, a little bit of tomato, shredded cheddar. Now, whether you wanna dollop a metric, a Keurig of sour cream on your taco or not is one thing. You have to have the classic jarred grocery store salsa here. Hilarious, except we're not gonna use that today. Taco sauce. What even is this? Tomato puree, first ingredient, water, corn scissor, distilled vinegar, salt. It's almost kind of like a Mexican ketchup. Thumi. All right, we're gonna try some of that. Ooh. Yeah, dude. That's literally like the taco sauce from Taco Bell. Which makes me wonder, does Mitla Cafe have a taco sauce of their own? I think I recall reading a little bit about it in the research, but comment below if you know. I like it, man. I like it. I feel guilty for some reason, but I don't feel guilty at all, man. It's good stuff. Oh. You know, we've done a lot of taco content here on the channel. We've learned a lot about the various tacos from the different parts of Mexico, how they came to be, how they're prepared, everything like that. This deserves its own place in the taco sphere, in the taco verse. It's different, sure, but it's still a taco. So is it American? Is it Mexican? I say it's both at the same time. It was made by a Mexican immigrant, blown up by an American salesman, and here we are. Each taco deserves its place on this counter right now, and without one, you wouldn't have the other. It started at Mitla Cafe, which inspired Taco Bell. And this guy here brought the tradition into our homes and made it popular to people who, you know, didn't really know what the heck a taco even was. And yes, to this day, we all still celebrate Taco Tuesday from time to time. And whether you do it authentically or your version of authentically is up to you to decide. And if you are a hard shell hater, if nothing else, man, try making my recipe here, which I'll leave in the description because it's worth your time. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, welcome back. What's good? TY for coming back and hanging out. The best way to support the channel is over on the Patreon, aka the grocery fund, or heading over to the store and copying some shirts, some merch. I custom make all of these bespoke shirts for sale for you. Hot and fresh. And if you like to cook, come introduce yourself over in the Discord. We are cooling and chatting and talking shop. So yeah, that's all I got this time. So until next we meet, adios.